We have a 20-month-old granddaughter who lives in Washington, D.C. with our son and his wife, again. And occasionally they will send us these short little videos of their children, our grandchild, not children, they only have one. And she's just now at 20 months learning to speak. And so he'll send us these video clips where she's sort of talking, if you understand what she's trying to say. And in the one we just got this weekend, Jonathan was sitting in front of their log fireplace, gas log in it, with Daphne beside him. And she keeps saying, fur, fur, which I assume means fire. And then she would say, ot, which can anyone guess? Hot, yeah, hot, fire hot. And then she'd sit there and she would straighten up, cross-legged, and she would say, wow, wow. And then she'd start over again and she'd go, wow, wow. And as I watched that, I thought, that is the definition of joy. You know, to see something that I take for granted or think, gosh, is this dangerous or what? All she sees is, wow. Isn't that a great definition of joy? And there's a carol in French. We sing it many times on Christmas Eve by a soloist, O Holy Night. And one of the lines in it goes, the weary world rejoices. The weary world rejoices. It's a weary world we're living in, isn't it? Where we can often maybe not just feel weary, but wary as well as weary. I got an email yesterday afternoon from a member who asked us to pray for a 5-year-old child diagnosed with a rare kidney disease. In Washington State and in Indonesia, there's tens of thousands displaced at a holiday time by floods. There's active combat on the Thai-Cambodia border. A Russian drone attacked a Turkish cargo ship in the Black Sea. As I mentioned, it's 35 below zero with the wind chill in the Midwest. And there was another shooting at Brown University just a couple of hours from here yesterday. It's a weary world, and it's hard to rejoice in a weary world. It's hard to say, wow, in that kind of world. I subscribe to a New York Times newsletter that sends me about once a week from their book editors or reviewers, reviews of old books. You know, some of them are from the 1930s, some of them are from the 20th century, and kind of is suggesting these are still worth reading, although they're not on the bestseller list anymore. And usually at the end it says, available at your local used bookstore or from your library. And back a few months ago, they reviewed this book. It was written in the 1990s, but some guy who teaches physics, or at the time taught physics at Amherst, UMass. And since it was published by Oxford Books, I thought, you know, it's legitimate. So I was walking through, can you guess, a used bookstore. And there it was. I thought, I just saw that. And so I picked it up for $3, the right price for a book. And it's probably worth the $3, not much more than that. It's not exactly a page turner. It's a history of how people from, ancient Egypt and the Bible up to Einstein and Niels Bohr understood light, how they thought about light. And there's interesting things in it, because one of the things it talks about is that light itself, we don't really ever see light itself. What we see is the particles bouncing off of things that make stuff appear. And one of the things he talks about after he talks about, Descartes and Newton and Kepler and Faraday and Planck and a lot of other people, I could remind you, this is not exactly a page turner. He ends talking about this at the very end. It was worth reading it for this. On May 18th, 1885, the French poet Victor Hugo, who wrote Les Miserables, at 86 years old, had a stroke. 4 days later, he died. He died speaking of light. Here is the battle of day against night, Hugo's last words continued, searching the darkest recesses of human nature for its brightest treasures. And that's Les Miserables. He died whispering, "I see black light." Is there light in darkness? Is the night empty, void, dead? Or does it offer more than its appearance suggests? He goes on then to talk about something I don't really understand, about how, again, Niels Bohr talking to Einstein, but he talks about what I think now we call dark matter, dark energy, and how space, even the darkness of space, isn't really empty. It's actually full of some sort of energy, and that light emerges out of that kind of dark energy. Without launching, he writes, without launching into the details of quantum electrodynamics, aren't you glad I'm not going to talk about that? He writes, I can still draw attention to a few features of the calculations that are suggestive of a new way of understanding darkness and emptiness. According to quantum electrodynamics, after one has removed all matter and all light from space, infinite energy still exists in it. It's not just a curious artifact, it can be calculated. And then he writes, for our purposes, there's another way of understanding darkness, of understanding our weary world. Darkness may be far richer and more structured fullness. Emptiness may actually be fullness, but just structured differently. We're encouraged to think that even in the darkest shadow, we can seek and find a hidden light. Who read that? Which child read that at the beginning? A light shines in the darkness, and the darkness can never put it out. No matter how weary and wary our world is, there is a hidden light that shines amid the darkness. And in that's what we rejoice in this season. So I wouldn't recommend this, but I think it's worth reading. For the last paragraph, you got to wade through 325 pages to get there. That even in places that seem empty and void of life, there is an energy present that emerges out of that, that in fact may be structured to give birth to light. So this is something to rejoice in, and in this season then, seek joy. Maybe for you it's hearing a song you associate with your childhood or with that person you dated once. Maybe it's that first sip of coffee or tea in the morning. Maybe it's the joy of finding yourself in a warm bed on a snowy morning. Maybe it's having someone call you and say, I'm glad you got home safely. Maybe it's dinner around your table. Maybe it's when you create something with your own hands. Maybe it's finding that old photo album and looking at those pictures. Maybe it's finding joy in hearing the honking of Canada geese going over the house on a December afternoon. Maybe it's the joy of children reading exceptionally well, better than some of us adults are willing to get up and read. Find joy. No matter how weary or frightening your world is, there is joy. There is a light that comes even in the darkest places when all other lights may have failed us. Maybe it's joy in Tessa, who took among all the stresses and strains and worries and excitement of being in high school to do something beautiful for others. May this Advent, this Christmas, no matter how weary we are or how frightening our world is, we're called to rejoice in the light that's always hidden in shadows. That, in fact, the shadows may feed and spark to life. Amen.